Developing news out of Quebec, the provincial government has tabled a new draft constitution. The new document is aimed at protecting Quebecers' core values.
My understanding from the meetings that have occurred that the Trump administration officials have indicated that the U.S. would recognize a vote by the people of Alberta to become independent. So that's very important to us.
Alberta and Quebec both want decentralization and more power at home, but we tend to want different kinds. Quebec more cultural, Alberta more physical, but we do to some extent.
And things are changing. I mean, so it might happen that as Quebec's sovereignty movement, independence movement grows in strength, and probably Alberta's same movement grows in strength, you'll find federal politicians nervous saying, okay, let's renegotiate in good faith. I think we've been through that. Once it's done, so once Quebec declares independence, I think if Alberta declares independence, Quebec will follow, saying same here.
Quebec and Alberta will be broken off within our lifetimes. My man, I give it a decade. Quebec, it's just a matter of making it official. I don't think they're going to have a referendum. I think they're just going to do it de facto. De facto meaning someone is going to recognize them once they write their constitution, and they're going to be like, what's Canada going to do about it? They're talking about writing a constitution, man. They already cut all ties with the monarchy in Quebec. They're just doing stuff. They just do it. They literally they're writing a constitution, people. That makes them a de facto country. What's Canada going to do? What's Canada? Nothing. Quebec is going to be a de facto country. Maybe France will recognize them, and it's over. They're a country now, de facto. Because as much as China does not agree with the fact that Taiwan is a country nonetheless. China thinks Taiwan is a part of our country. No, it ain't. They're their own country. Why? Because they got international recognition. That's why. As soon as another country recognizes, it's over. The only way that you can get it back is by force, and Canada's not going to do that. They're not going to do it to Quebec especially, because Quebec is like their little baby, like their spoiled little brat, while Alberta's treated like an adopted child. Definitely give credit where due. Quebec is actually sovereign within Canada. Quebec collects its own taxes. Quebec has its own immigration. Quebec has its own pension plan. The only thing Quebec is lacking to be an independent country is that they make it official, and they're already in the process of doing that. If you guys don't know, you can go and look for an article called The Little Known Fact That Quebec, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. The National Post put it out there. They're already writing their constitution. So Canada is separating one way or another. This country is not going to be together over the next 10 years. I give it a decade max. In our lifetimes, Canada is going to collapse. And I don't mean financially, I mean geographically. This is Yugoslavia 2.0. This country is being held together by bribes, corruption, and just nostalgia. Canadians are used to the hockey, and in the 80s, it was great when we flew the Maple Leaf, and we were all proud, and we sang In All Thy Sons Command, which Trudeau changed it to In All of Us Command so that he can include everybody else, even though it was sons who died in those wars. It was sons who were deployed to all of those wars.
You become independent, and a bit like Norway and Sweden or Slovakia and Czech Republic, or in many, of course, in the following days, I will not be wanting to negotiate with the federal. I will want to negotiate with other provinces who think actually mostly the same thing as I do about how it should work. Doesn't mean we agree on our priorities, but we agree that a framework that would would show respect to our respective parliaments is much better than abuse of power based on a old and dysfunctional constitution.
Besides the obvious fact that both provinces are still a part of Canada currently, and both are looking to separate from Canada for their own reasons, there's also the very important fact that this guy has stated his support for Alberta independence publicly. And he is an elected official in the province of Quebec. He recently visited Alberta to express his support for our independence movement. But he went even further and asserted that an independent Quebec would be one of the first jurisdictions to recognize an independent Alberta. He reportedly met with the leaders of the Alberta Prosperity Project, where there was talk of collaboration between the two independence movements. This is very significant for Alberta patriots, as we add an elected official who is likely to be the next premier of a province next year, expressing support for the movement.
Can you repeat on the bill that was just tabled in Quebec on a Quebec constitution? Can you repeat in English what your reaction is to that?
Oh, in English it would be much shorter than in French. If the National Assembly of Quebec, l'Assemblée nationale du Québec, which is the only voice of the Quebec nation as a nation, wants to have discussions about a constitution, it's none of Canada's business.
Saint-Pierre Plamondon just had a successful visit to Alberta, where he built a number of bridges with independence leaders in Alberta. Are you planning in the near future to travel to Alberta yourself or meet with leaders of Alberta's independence movement?
I had thought about it, but I understand that since Paul did it, it is not necessary for me to do that trip. But I'm very open to this idea. We have to start all independentist voices and leaders to explain who we are, what we want, the way we would do it, and what it would be the morning after.
Alberta and Quebec, two Canadian provinces that rarely see eye to eye on most issues, seem to have become unlikely allies against Canada's totalitarian Marxist regime. And this is where things get very interesting, because Quebec has been pushing to become independent from Canada for a while now. At least since the 1980s, they've been pursuing to separate from the rest of the country with varying degrees of success. They've had 2 referendums, the last of which came this close to being a win for those who wanted to separate. Something like 51 to stay to 49 to leave. And many people in Canada, especially in Alberta, argue whether they actually wanted to separate or simply get more concessions from the rest of the country. Something that affects Alberta directly, given that Alberta is the largest contributor to the communistic national welfare program that we call equalization, and Quebec being the largest taker and consumer of said program, because they complain and threaten to leave all the time. But now you have pro-independence politicians from Quebec teaming up with Alberta independence leaders for collaboration in mutual interests, i.e. separating from Canada. This is Yugoslavia all over again. I mean, these 2 provinces are starting to write their own constitutions, for crying out loud, all in preparation. Honestly, I don't think Canada will survive this.
Thank you for watching. If you support these videos, subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss an update from PJ. Special thanks to each and every channel member for your support and for making these reports possible. I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.